Hello, my name is David with Dr. Ceph, a cephalometric analysis program with Cloud9 Ortho integration. This is a short demonstration video on how to trace a Ceph and use the integration between Dr. Ceph and Cloud9 Ortho. So to start, what I recommend is going into Cloud9 Ortho and making sure that you have a patient that is ready to go in their image series. We need two images to trace Ceph. We need the cephalometric X-ray and the facial profile. On the Ceph X-ray, it's important to have ample space in front of the nose and the chin, something to calibrate with. It's usually located on the nose guide, as you see here, and an ear guide that sits in that patient's ear that designates where the center of that was. Sometimes it'll be a metal dot or a metal ring. You can see there a bright white dot showing you where the center of that ear guide is. On the facial profile, it's important to have ample space in front of the nose and the chin, and we ideally like to work with the full head, because what we do is we crop down this image to match it to the cephalometric X-ray and create our melted image where it's superimposing both those images over each other. So once we know that we've got our two images, we are ready to go. You don't even need to go into Cloud9 Ortho if you know that you've got your two images in the same image series and you know which image series you actually want to work with. All you have to do is launch Dr. Ceph from the desktop. It is a locally installed Windows-based program, and you just launch it like any other application you would use. I've already got it open right here. The patient wizard will always open up once you open up the Dr. Ceph program. You can always hit cancel on the patient wizard and get back to it at the end of the toolbar right here where it says patient wizard. The new patient button, this will do a standalone case outside of Cloud9 Ortho, not tied to your Cloud9 Ortho domain. Existing patients will show you all the existing patients that have been traced on this computer so far. And the Cloud9 patient button will allow you to go into Cloud9, log in securely to your domain, and run a Ceph on a true Cloud9 patient. The current patient is always the last patient that you work with. So if you're working on a patient on Friday and you come back in on Monday, you can pick back up where you left off right there at the current patient button. But the button you're going to be using 99% of the time is going to be the Cloud9 patient button. So we just select that. It will prompt us to log in. Once we've logged in, it will present us with the Find Patient dialog. This works exactly the same way as the Cloud9 Ortho search dialogs work. So you can work with last name, first name, or you can search by patient ID number. So I've just created a test case in this scenario, and we can find them just by doing that. If you're looking for somebody named Smith, just make sure you're grabbing the right one. You can either double-click or select and click open. We'll just double-click, select the race of the patient. This is important for doing cephalometrics to be able to relate what your patient's measurements are and where they should be. And now this will present us with the Cloud9 Ortho image series dialogs. This is now looking in Cloud9 Ortho into your domain and showing you all of the image series that have been created for this patient. Right now, I only have one, which is just my beginning records. Now, the important part here is tying that to the proper Ceph treatment phase down at the bottom where you want these images to end up. By default, pre-treatment is selected, so that would be fine. But if I was working with a progress set of records, I would want to come down here and select which treatment phase I want those images to end up, depending on how many more phases of treatment I will have for this patient. We allow 5 phases of treatment for a patient. It's usually going to be more than enough for most cases. But we do offer a second X-ray slot for every phase of treatment. So technically, you can do a total of 10 X-rays for a patient if you wanted to. Normally, what we recommend using that second X-ray slot for is things like a frontal X-ray or occlusal models and things like that. So all we have to do is we just select our image series at the top, and we select our treatment phase down at the bottom and say, OK. What it'll do is it'll download everything from Cloud9 Ortho about that patient, including birth date, so you don't have to duplicate any of that. And it'll download those images, and then it will immediately bring up the calibration system. We have set this up to handle X-ray sources, any number of X-ray machines, over any number of offices. So if you have 3 offices and you have a Ceph X-ray machine in each of them, we can set up a calibration source for each office, and it will automatically calibrate from that point on once we get it set up. So we just select where that X-ray came from. I'm just going to grab my test case at the top. And then I will start the analysis wizard. If you ever happen to cancel the analysis wizard, you can always get back to it under the top line menu, analysis wizard. So to start it, we'll just say OK. It'll say to enter the set points. What it will do is it'll enlarge the X-ray and start prompting us for the points in our analysis. So all we have to do is we just place and left click where we think that point should be. We can zoom down in all the way up to 500% if we really want to get that high definition where we want to place those points. As we place the point, it'll move on to the next point. Nathion. Over to the right, we have a landmark location dialog showing an approximation of where those points should go. This is great for a new user. If you're passing this off to somebody who's never even traced Ceph before, they should be able to figure it out. So I'll go ahead and run through this. While you're zoomed in like this, you can also right-click and drag to move around in that same zoomed position. So we'll go ahead and run through a few of these. And if you make a mistake, you can go back as many points as you want. But let's say if I had misplaced Menton down here, don't worry about it. All of these points can be moved around and adjusted once you're done with that analysis. So I'll go ahead and run through this pretty quickly. The results reference point, we've added this into the analysis to handle showing analysis results on a Ceph. Some people like to see, if you're tracing the E-plane out here in front of the lips, they'll show the E-plane maxillary and E-plane mandibular measurements out in front of it, or if they have an SNA measurement, they'll show it up around the eye socket. But we found the best way to do this is to put all of the analysis results on the top left of the skull. There's never going to be any points around here, and so you just place that up there in the top left, results reference point. Soft tissue glabella, hard tissue nasion. And at this point, we have completed that patient's analysis. You can see it drawing the lines and angles on the face. You can see our E-plane out in front and the analysis results printed out on the top left of the skull. But since we have this patient's profile photo, we should go ahead and continue on with the analysis wizard. It's just a few extra steps, and what it'll do is it'll create that melted image that I was talking about earlier and give us access to some of the more advanced features like superimpositions and surgical projections and things like that. So we'll just say OK to that. It's going to say that we've already found 3 of our 4 points. Just say yes to that. This is where you want to use the center of the ear canal on the ear guide. And there's usually some metal designator as the center of that. So I'm going to place it on the center of that metal dot. And then we enter those same 4 points in the photos. So just keep following that analysis wizard. We're looking for center of the ear canal, soft tissue nasion, pronasale, and soft tissue begonion. Our final step is to start the photo alignment. Just say OK to that. It will tile our 4 views, show us a traced Ceph in the top left, the traced lateral photo in the top right, and the traced melded image in the bottom left where it's superimposing both of those images over each other. Down in the bottom right is the analysis view. This is color-coded to show you the degrees of severity. Black is within the norm. Green is 1 standard deviation away from the norm. Blue, which isn't on here, would be 2 standard deviations, and red is 3 standard deviations away from the norm. So it's really giving you that visual representation of where the problem areas might be for your patient. Now, once you're done with that analysis, you can maximize this image at any time. Like I was saying, you can move around any of these points that you want to fine-tune things. As you're moving around on the Ceph, it's just a regular mouse pointer, but as you start to get close to a point, it'll turn to a crosshair, and down on the bottom left corner of the screen, it'll show that this is upper incisor, incisal edge, in parentheses is number 7. That's our landmark number, and that's how you know which point you're currently moving. And then you can just left-click and move and drag these points wherever you want, and the analysis will automatically update. So things like this, I wanted to come back in here and make sure my teeth were looking good. I'm going to resize my molars a little bit, and that looks pretty good. So at this point, you can probably tell that what we do is we place a template of the tracings over the face. Everybody's face is going to be a little bit different, so if you are tracing that soft tissue profile, you will want to adjust that. Same thing with the hard tissue of the mandible. Everybody's jaw is going to be a little bit different from one person to the next. And so to change the shape of those tracings, all we do is we go to the top menu, Trace, and Trace Control. It will hide our analysis lines just to make everything a little bit easier to see, and then only show us the structures that we're currently tracing. Right now, I wanted to adjust the soft tissue profile. Once we do that, it'll add in a bunch of little dots we can then use to adjust and change the shape of these tracings. And you can combine that with the zoom tool to really get down in there and change and adjust the way these tracings look. So I'll go ahead and adjust these a little bit. We'll pull in our point C down here. And I did want to adjust the hard tissue mandible since everybody's jaw is usually going to be a little bit different. So we can kind of pull this in and adjust and fine tune this tracing to make sure it's truly matching our patient's hard tissue and soft tissue. And that looks pretty good. So we'll zoom back out. Again, some of the changes that you might be making, if you're zoomed in at 500%, you might not even be able to see once you zoom back out. So just keep in mind, you can get as accurate as you would ever want with these. If you were tracing like something like Cello or the orbit, you would probably want to adjust the shape of those. Another common area to adjust is the bottom part of the maxilla right here. We can pull down that wall. So once that's done, we can just hit finish. It will restore our analysis back to normal. So now we got our nice clean tracings with our analysis lines. Everything looks good. And we're ready to send everything back up to Cloud9 Ortho. And that's going to be our final step. Is all we have to do is go to Cloud9 at the top menu and then sync image series. And what it'll do is it'll send everything back up to Cloud9 Ortho where they came down from. You can see my 712 beginning records right here. And we can just sync it. It will send everything back up to Cloud9 Ortho and close out once it's done. Now, as long as you're syncing it to Cloud9 Ortho, everything else in the Dr. Ceph program is saved by default. If you're done for the day, you can just close down the program and turn off your computer. You're done. You don't even need to save any of this. Again, as long as you're syncing it to Cloud9. If you wanted to hop right over into your next patient, if you have maybe 3 or 4 tracings you're wanting to do in one day, you just go back to that patient wizard. You can go to Cloud9 patient, or you can go to existing patients, and you can see it automatically closes everything out behind you, automatically saves everything, so you don't have to worry about any of that. So now that it's been synced, we can hop back over to Cloud9 Ortho. In this current version, they have a reload button right here at the top right that will allow you to refresh that image series. And so we can just expand that. And what it'll do is it'll add in our 4 new images. So we've got our trace Ceph. Sometimes this will be abbreviated as TC for trace Ceph, TL for trace profile, and TM for traced melded. And then down at the bottom, we've got the color-coded analysis showing you the degrees of severity in color. As you can see, we exported out using a different algorithm to smooth out the tracing lines and things like that. So that is the basics of the program and the integration between Cloud9 Ortho. If you have any questions, feel free to reach out to me at support@fyitek.com, or you can also give us a call at 208-265-8374. Again, my name is David with the Dr. Ceph program. Have a great day.